Board, Brandy. It's great to have you here. Thank you so much. Great to have you join us. Our faculty and staff professional development coordinator, Professor Naima Payne. She's here today. Great to see you, Dr. Sadia Porche. She spearheads lots of student efforts, special programs, Umoja, EOPS, and our CalWorks program, among many, many other programs, Guardian Scholars. So she works our special program. So we're so fortunate to have this great group of people. In addition to that, let us not forget our staff who hold everything together. Miss Lillian Johnson, who is my executive assistant, and her colleague, Camille Duncan, is our administrative assistant in the Office of the President. And one of our newest members, Evan Johnson, who has been doing so much great work related to this. He works for Dr. Day. And Dr. Day, if you want to give me the cue, we'll get us started.
Let's get started.
All right. I am so happy to see everyone here. We've got almost 100 participants. Thank you so much for coming to this very special town hall for Black Lives Matter. This series that we started last summer has been bringing such amazing speakers to our campus. But we are so incredibly proud to bring to you today the inimitable Dr. Berenice King. To be able to have you in our midst, Dr. King, is, I just can't even tell you how special this is to all of us here. And to have it moderated by our own local news anchor, Pat Harvey. Oh my goodness. I mean, I wish I was in the same room with you, because watching you, for all of these years in Los Angeles and the key member that you are, and to be able to have you here with us today, I can't even tell you how grateful I am to have you here. So I want to welcome everyone here. And I'd like to turn it over real quickly to our co-sponsor for the event from our great LACC Foundation, Mr. Robert Schwartz.
Thanks, Dr. Gallagher. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, Dr. King and Pat Harvey. It's really just such a thrill to have you both with us. I just wanted to quickly say that, the LACC Foundation, which is the largest community college foundation in Los Angeles, one of the largest in the country, is well known for the money that we give out to our students in a whole host of ways. But really, one of the things that we do, that we've started to do in the past few years, is to create endowments to have opportunities such as this for students and faculty and staff to hear from thought leaders and others in the community and throughout the United States, to share with us what they're thinking about common interest. So we've created multiple endowments for this purpose for authors and speakers and journalists. We actually just had a journalism session last week. And I just wanted to say that we couldn't do this without the help of our very generous donors. In this case, it's the Richard and Mary Garth Green Endowment. Richard Green was a English professor at LACC before passing away. And his son, Robert, contacted me a couple of years ago about putting something together. And we decided to use the money that was coming in for a speaker series. So that's where the funding is coming from for this. And again, I hate to date myself, but as a child of the 60s, I cannot tell you personally what a thrill it is for me to be able to see Dr. King and to hear her thoughts today. So thank you so much for being here. And thank you, Pat, for moderating this.
Thank you, Robert. And I'm going to hand it over to our Chancellor, Francisco Rodriguez.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Dr. Gallagher, members of the LACC family, members of LACCD family. Welcome. Welcome to this outstanding forum, this Black Lives Matter Town Hall. And I love the title, Our Time for Change. And I think that this is, for us, both aspirational as well as practical. And we've got the Dr. King in the house with us, along with wonderful panelists, moderated by Pat Harvey. This is going to be an outstanding day. So thank you so much for being here. And I welcome our special guests and our honored partners on behalf of the entire LACCD family. In just a minute, I'll ask Trustee Hoffman to say a few words on behalf of the board. But I'm reminded at this moment, our time for change, by a quote by the Reverend King, where he said, "We may have all come on different ships, but we're in the same boat now." And the pandemic has shined a very bright light on the disparities that existed well before this global health tragedy, the health and wealth gaps that exist, the importance of racial equity, social justice. And I think that today's discussion is a manifestation of the continued conversations that occurred many, many decades ago that we are clearly the beneficiaries of today. So Dr. King, I hope that you will see LACCD as a living manifestation and an extension and an echo of Reverend King's vision for a more equitable society. We have a very forward-looking, very aggressive framework for racial equity and social justice that we have embarked upon well before the pandemic, but are more concentrated now to provide learning and work environments for our students and for our faculty and staff here at LACCD. We're very intentional about rooting out the ill effects of racism that has occurred over the decades and becoming clearly a healthier anti-racist organization. So we claim that statement because we're going to be very intentional about doing good work in that space. So you're helping us to accelerate the conversation, to accessorize, if you will, our educational prowess, and to again nurture our moral compass to continue to move forward. So Dr. King, welcome. I'm so proud to host you today on behalf of our district, Dr. Gallagher and LA City College. So let me now ask our immediate past president of the board, Trustee Andrew Hoffman, to extend welcome to you all on behalf of the Board of Trustees.
Thank you, Chancellor, and thank you, Dr. Gallagher. And a special thank you to you, Robert Schwartz and the Foundation for being able to host this event today. I feel like I'm dating myself as well, and I feel very honored and blessed to be able to have you here with us, Dr. King and Ms. Harvey. It's very exciting. Interesting that we have to do this on Zoom, and hopefully next year you can come to our beautiful campus at Los Angeles City College and we can do this in person. So on behalf of the entire Board of Trustees, I want to welcome you here today and welcome everyone. I see now we have 133 participants. So without further ado, I turn it over to you, and thank you so much. We're honored and blessed to have you here.
All right, I'll turn this back over to you, Dr. Day. I just wanted to recognize Dr. Ruben Smith, our Vice Chancellor of Facilities for our district. He is here with the district staff as well.
Thank you, Dr. Gallagher. Good afternoon and welcome to the Black Lives Matter Town Hall meeting. Our time has come. Black History Month is a time to celebrate, reflect, and to be inspired to action, specifically action and advocacy. This month, we laud heroes like John Lewis, Elijah Cummings, Shirley Chisholm, Dorothy Irene Height, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., President Barack Obama, and so many others who've come before us and made our world a better place for all. Their courage and activism should serve as a call to action to each of us this month and every month to continue to fight for the promise of equality on which our nation was founded. Today's town hall meeting is very historic, meaningful, and necessary. Since May of last year on our campus, we've hosted town hall meetings to help us explore ways to address critical issues that are associated with race, equity, and social justice. Today is no different. Because this is Black History Month, we will pause for a moment to salute and celebrate individuals whose shoulders we stand. I am very, very excited today to have our special guest, Dr. Berenice King, and to have a moderated panel by Pat Harvey is very awesome. Our moderator, CBS 2 anchor Pat Harvey, is a veteran newswoman who has covered some of the biggest local news stories, political conventions, presidential inaugurations, and she has traveled the world. Pat has won 25 Emmy Awards, including 3 for the Best Newscast. The most recent was presented to her in 2018 for Outstanding Feature Reporter. In addition to being a journalist, Pat is a community servant. When I reached out to her and asked if she would join us today, she did not hesitate because service is what Pat Harvey does. Pat joined CBS 2 after 20 years with the sister station KKL9, one of the original anchors of the nation's first nightly 3-hour newscast. Please help me in welcoming to Los Angeles City College news anchor and accomplished journalist, Pat Harvey.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Day. It is my distinct pleasure to be with all of you today. And I must say, when I got the call from LA City College and saying that Dr. King would be here, I made it a point, and I believe I answered you right away. I'm going to be very brief here. I'm dating myself as well. I did have the opportunity to meet Dr. King's mother, and you, Dr. King, and all of your siblings. I believe it was Ebenezer Baptist Church a few decades ago. So yes, I am dating myself. But for me, it was a distinct honor. My parents were still alive at the time, and to know that I met some of the King family for them was just one of the most beautiful things, I think, that they've witnessed from me, or just saying I had the opportunity to meet you. I didn't have a smartphone at the time because I don't think they were made. So I couldn't take those pictures like we do today. So anyway, just wanted to give some background. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dr. Berenice King. She is a minister, orator, advocate for peace, CEO of the Martin Luther King Jr. Center for Nonviolent Social Change, better known as the King Center. And she is the youngest daughter of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King. Dr. King, first off, we've been talking about the racial inequality, it seems like forever, but it's only amplified now because of the pandemic. So first question to you, how do we get all citizens in our society to fully recognize the systemic issues of poverty, homelessness, and food insecurity?
First of all, let me just thank all of you for this opportunity to join you on this afternoon, and thank you for your question, Pat. I think we are in a season where we are going to have to be more intentional about educating people around the issues. I think we often take for granted that because we know something and understand something from our vantage point, that everybody knows it or should know it. And that's just not the case. There are a lot of people, very intelligent people, very bright people, who just don't have all of the facts. They don't have all of the information. And we have to take the time to inform them. And we have to do it in a manner where we are trying to win people over in terms of understanding. Many times when we have conversations around the issues that are very pressing in our society, whatever they might be, around racial disparities, around all of the injustices, around all of the inequities, we can be very, sometimes people can be very self-righteous in their presentation. They can be very insensitive to the fact that if we're going to get people to a certain place, we have to be patient enough to bring them along. Now, it doesn't mean patient in the sense that we sit back and let injustice continue, but patient in understanding that it took us a process to get where we are. Everybody doesn't get to the same place at the same time. People come to this life with different backgrounds, different cultural experiences. And that all has to be factored into the equation. And so I think we're just in this extraordinary time of education and awareness, and we don't need to be taken for granted. And we need to be intentional about ensuring that everybody has the same understanding of what we're talking about. For instance, when we're talking about racism, sometimes when people speak about it, they speak about it in the context of racial prejudice acts that are done out of hate, and not in the context necessarily of systemic issues. When you talk about racism, you're talking about a power construct, a social construct, but also a power construct. And many times when people in the conversation, they may be coming from the angle of people who are exhibiting, hateful behavior, being prejudiced, being discriminatory. But then there's this whole other around racism, meaning people who have those kinds of feelings, but they don't necessarily have the power to carry out. So when you think about racism, you have to talk about it in terms of prejudice plus power. That's why whenever I've been in conversations, I always say to people, as a group, Black people do not have the power to exercise racism because we don't have the power to do it. We might have prejudice, but we don't control the various systems and structures. And so taking the time to help people understand these different things, justice. A lot of people feel like justice is if we get a conviction with the police, then that's justice. That's some individual justice. But my father pushed us and said that if we want to get to true peace, we got to get to justice. And so if we're going to have justice, we got to think about the whole picture of justice. Because even though you might have, in this instance, you might have an arrest, a conviction, and a jailing, a sentencing, that person is now, under punishment, so to speak. At the end of the day, you still have an unjust system. And so do we have justice yet? So we have to have these in-depth conversations to get us to at least a better understanding. I don't think we'll ever be at a place, and I think it's unrealistic for any of us to push for the kind of unity where everybody thinks alike. I think that's idealistic and unrealistic because we will never all think alike. We will never all believe alike, but we can find ways to coexist, and we can all embrace a common value system in moving forward. And so that's what I think has to be done in this season, that we really have to spend an extraordinary amount of time educating each other.
Dr. King, I was always taught to believe that to be in the position to be a racist, you have to be in the position to oppress people, to have power. I'm interested in, and when you say we need to convince people to have conversations where we also pull them in, as opposed to probably making them feel really bad about what we're trying to get them to understand. So how do we do that with the levels of power in our country, where we hear so many of our legislators even saying they don't even recognize systemic racism? In fact, they say there is no systemic racism. How do we start that dialogue or get to the position where even they will listen and understand, fully understand?
Well, again, it's a process. they, whoever the they is, I'm always amazed at the they. Who is they?
Right.
But the they has to be worked on by the other. um, there, my father did not spend time trying to convince everybody. Um, he put it out there, and those that could hear are the ones that you have to kind of move with.
Mm.
Um, and over time, as those people move together and people continue to work on other, I don't even like looking at it as working on other people, because at the end of the day, in my personal opinion, the most powerful thing my father said to all of us is that we must learn how to live together as brothers and sisters, or together we will be forced. And that's very key to hear that. Together we will be forced to perish as fools. So this learning curve is something that we all have to engage in, because none of us is culturally there. None of us is so astute culturally that we can say that we are, ultimately the most compassionate, the most loving, the most understanding person. There's always room to grow and learn more. And so I think it's approaching it with a humility of understanding that some people you may convince through the process of educating and open their eyes and through various experiences. Some of it is exposure to things. Part of the reason that many people are still quote unquote ignorant is because they live in these silos. And as long as they stay in and remain in those silos, they're going to remain in that ignorance. And so it's going to be up to those who do have the quote unquote awakening, or who are woke, to be committed to waking up others. And so that's for my white brothers and sisters. They're those that have, the light bulb has gone off. And they're now saying, racism, systemic racism is real. They're saying there's something about white privilege and my white privilege, and they're examining that personally. Those are the brothers and sisters that I personally believe have the responsibility of reaching the other ones, because they came out of that place of ignorance. So they would know what is the pathway to bring the others along. I may not be the person to reach this legislator that you're talking about. It may be the legislator who the light bulb has gone off to reach that person. And we have to look at it like that. I never see my responsibility as everybody. My responsibility is to those that will hear me. And when people hear me, and when I know they hear me, I know there's an opening, then I can continue to share. But it's not just about me sharing, it's about also understanding, how do we disarm people in this process? Because many people who are in that place of ignorance, lack of understanding, they're going to have their guards up because they feel like everybody's charging at them. You're the racist, you're the wrong person, you're the evil person or whatever. And if we just come at them, that's not going to cause any kind of transformation. So we have to kind of do what Stephen Covey counseled us to do, highly, the seven, what does he call it? The 7 habits of highly effective people. One of those being seeking first to understand than to be understood. I think we're spending a lot of time right now trying to figure out how do we get them, they again, how do we get them to understand us? Not how do we think we understand them. They're just racist. And it's more to the story than that. How did they get to this place? What experiences and exposures have they had? You know, I heard a story recently, and it was so intriguing to me. And I won't tell the whole story, but I'll just summarize it. Around the state flag issue in Mississippi, and two different individuals, very different perspectives. One, that the flag was heritage and important. The other, the flag is very insulting to our heritage. The one who felt it was insulting wanted it gone, and the other one obviously wanted it to remain. The person who felt like it was insulting, instead of approaching the other person by saying, this is insulting, this is wrong, the way you feel is racist, etc., approach the conversation by asking the question, why is this flag important to you? We have to learn to let go of what is our feeling that we're right, our need to be right, our feeling that we are right. Because otherwise, people who are in those places and have those positions are going to dig in even deeper. So how do we invite them out? You have to disarm people. You have to show them, I want to understand why, I want to understand this crazy thinking. You don't say crazy, of course.
No. But like psychology. Yeah,
it is.
Yeah.
It definitely is. It does work. And I don't think people realize, it's also the power, of love. When you love radically, love is not, this person. I'm talking to you, Pat. You seem like a very kind and a nice person. And we may have similar beliefs. I love Pat. Well, I mean, that's easy. But now let's put you, Pat, let's put you in the shoes of, someone who's very hateful, someone who thinks Black people are less than, or whatever the case might be. I still love that person. Berenice King does. And I know this is hard for most people, but we are not going to change our world just by pointing fingers at people. We're going to change our world by resisting injustice, but having a commitment to the well-being even of that person and their transformation. That's how we're going to change the world. That's how my father changed the world.
I was going to say,
he was committed to his enemies. He was committed to his adversaries. He was committed to his oppressors. He was committed to their well-being. He wanted the best for them. He knew they were hostage to this evil because one day they were born as kids and they were processed through a system that it wasn't a system they created. They were processed through a system they found as a child, that they found there upon birth. And now they're an adult and they've been surrounded by all of this hate and all of this erroneous thinking, and they're operating out of it. And we're, now in this society, we're so mad at them. And I'm mad at the injustice. I'm mad at the fact that evil has them. I'm mad that darkness has them. That's who I'm mad at. Now, yes, I'm human. Do sometimes I have those human emotions that we all have? We all have that. But when I land at the end of the day, I can't hold a grudge or hate that person. I want that person to be just as free as I am.
I love how you put that. And that is so much like your father. And, You know, I'm going to ask another question that's not written here, just in terms of our younger generations, some who have different opinions about how we go about things, about when you talk about love that person, even though they may hate you. You know, because if you talk and try to understand them, you may win them over to your side. Well, there's the thinking that you're wasting too much time with that. Our time is now, and maybe we should try a different way. What's your response to that, Dr. King? Since I know we have
My question would be to them, what's the other way? You know, because I love to engage in the conversation with young people, you know, just to get in their head. I mean, I want to process your thinking and try to walk them through it. I mean, sometimes people, like when people start talking about, you know, if you're gonna get their attention, you got to use a little bit of violence. I said, okay, let's walk down that street. What is your ultimate goal? So is your ultimate goal? Well, I want freedom for my people. I want liberation. I want equity. I want to make sure that we are seen in a certain light, and that the cops treat us this kind of way, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So how do you get to that goal? Because if you try to use violence to get to that goal, what is going to be the outcome? So we got to look at this in terms of outcomes. Is the outcome to create a society that's just, humane, that sees you in a dignified way and treats you that way? So if you utilize violent means, do you think that at the end that's going to be the outcome? So, you know, that's you know, my approach to all of this is I try to stay focused on the ultimate goal. That's what my dad did.
yes.
You know, what seems to be missing in today's climate is there's not enough voices. Fortunately, it was a voice at that point that was pretty loud. But now with all of the opportunities to have a platform and so many voices, there needs to be a collection of voices that are really calling people to higher places and giving them a vision to strive towards something. You know, the Bible says, without a vision, the people perish. Another translation said the people cast off restraint. And that's where we are today. People are casting, there's no restraint. You know, it's all open field. You know, people just going at it and going for it. Because there's been no casting of a vision. What are we rallying around? Daddy kept us focused on that.
Yes, he did. Well, you know, Dr. King, it's really unfortunate that we can't have you on every campus or darn near every corner in this country to say exactly what you're saying here. So I think those
we're working toward it. We're working toward it.
Well, wonderful.
We're working toward not just me, but a collection of people,
voices.
because we got to get above all this noise. I'm concerned that we are going to destroy ourselves and lose our humanity.
Very strong.
And civilization. I really am, because the anger, the fear, the hate, the level of injustice is so entrenched in our society. And I'm afraid that, I'm glad you talk about our time. I'm afraid if we don't seize this time period that we have before us to really correct course, we're going to be in serious trouble. And particularly, and I hate to say it this way, but particularly as it relates to the Black community. And the only reason I say it that way is because we got to be honest. When we look across the board in every arena of American life, Black people are at the bottom. without fail. Now you talking about, huh?
And have been.
And have been. And we've got to make some leaps. We got to close these gaps. And I love diversity, equity, inclusion, but there has to be intentionality in it. Just recently, and I've been touting this, not because they're hometown, corporation headquartered here at Coca-Cola, but just recently, some of you may have read that Coca-Cola basically said to any law firms out there that want to do business with them, that 30% of their partners, associates, paralegals, so 30% of those who work for that firm throughout had to fit these different diverse categories. They had Asian, they had Black, they had LGBTQ, they had Latino, they may have said Indigenous. They said 30% in your firm, your law firm, to do business with us. If not, we're not paying the bill, the full bill. And in fact, 50% of those 30 must be Black. They did something that was distinguishable and intentional to make a difference in terms of the Black community. That is important. They didn't just say diverse. They said, and by the way, 50% of those need to be Black. And they probably did that because Coke is headquartered in a city that is over 50% Black. Right, exactly. So, and then they said after a while, it's going to have to be 50% representing these diverse categories. And then 50% of those have to be Black. And if not, you won't be doing business with Coca-Cola.
And something?
That's the radicalness that has to take place today.
And it's not, we call it radical, but it didn't have to be that way, right?
It doesn't. No, it's not. It's going to be the right thing to do.
Right. Then you and would probably find your product, your company elevated, considering how many people drink Coca-Cola. And we're just using that, how many Black people drink Coca-Cola. Right. We're just using that particular company as an example. But even across the board, just missives such as that would probably, would you say, elevate us to a different place?
Oh, by all means, that's one small thing. I mean, we got the solution to everything. My dad said, he said, look, we have enough resources to solve all of our problems. We just don't have the will. So I'm on a mission to help build the will to do what's right. I mean, we shouldn't have to keep coming to these crises after crises to get us to suddenly act and do what's right. We ought to be already proactive. I mean, I'm hoping that there are enough schools, corporations, civic organizations that are being very diligent in this season about correcting. We got to correct. And part of correcting is we got to tell some truths. So that's why we at the King Center, are going to be working with Brian Stevenson on these truth-telling commissions. Because part of our process is to go back to our foundation, because you cannot heal and really move forward in progress as a nation if you don't first tell the truth. And then we got to create a new narrative going forward. And we got to build from a new place, because right now, if we keep in the same direction, it's going to get worse.
Well, Dr. King, I'm going to pick up on what you just mentioned. You talked about the discussions at the King Center. You also have a new campaign, and we've been talking about this a little bit during our discussion today. It's called Be Love, and it challenges people to get involved and not sit on the sidelines. So can you tell us more about this campaign, and how do you get other people involved?
So yeah, we've been talking a lot about the vision of the beloved community, and how do we get there? Obviously love is contained within Be Love. And we felt that with the state of affairs of our world, not just this country, that now was the time to capture people's attention, to really focus the energy and effort around how do we translate my father's words into action and do what they did. They were loved in the 50s and 60s under his leadership. That whole movement came out of a mindset, an intention around love that I talked about earlier. You want to ensure the good and the best for all. And you do that on all levels. And so this campaign is a global movement for justice, because my father talked about love, justice, and power kind of together. He said, what is needed is the realization that power without love is reckless and abusive, and that love without power is sentimental and anemic. So you need power, you need love. And he went on to say, power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice. And justice at its best is love, keyword, correcting everything that stands against love. Because even as we try to correct course, as we try to deal with injustices, we can't ensure outcomes of justice and be unjust in the process. We can't expect to get to peace if we're being not peaceful. So the means to the end have to be consistent. And so this campaign is about awakening a new understanding of love for people, defining this love. What is it? Tangibly, how does it show up? How does it show up in social media when people are hurling insults?
Oh.
How does it show up? What does be love look like when you are literally insulting me? Do I insult you back? What use of energy is that? Where does that really get? It feels good. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But really doesn't feel good, because what is it doing to our internal bodies at the end of the day? Because emotions can wreak havoc on your body.
Absolutely.
Negative emotions. So when I vehemently disagree with somebody, how do I show up in that conversation? How can I overcome inhumanity without trying to create outcasts?
Mm-hmm.
I know we talk a lot about this cancel culture.
Right.
You can't cancel people out of a beloved community. I mean, where are you canceling them to? They're still in our universe. They're still, as my daddy said, in our world house. They're still here. And they still have presence. They still have connections. And they still have influence, because everybody on the earth has influence. Even if it's with 5 people, everybody has influence. And so Be Love is about, how do I show up and implement the demands of justice, but yet still have a great love for my brother and sister? How do I correct those things? And I'm talking about legislative things, from the local all the way to the national level. So this is a campaign where we're inviting people in a conversation first in our training to understand more about love from Dr. King's perspective. Because I think if anybody epitomized it, not in this weak and sentimental way, but in this very strong, forceful way, it was Martin Luther King Jr. and those who work with him in that movement. So there's something they have to say to us, because we see tangible outcomes from what they did. They're measurable.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And so we have a 3-part Be Love training series that accompanies this. We are getting people to sign a pledge so that on a daily basis, I'm thinking about this. I'm committed to this in all of my actions, in the way I speak, in the way I think, in the way You know, I conduct myself, you know, I'm hoping we can get up to those legislators up in DC.
They.
Yeah, yeah. So it is awareness, it's about service initiatives, and we're also encouraging people, and this is very important. We're encouraging people to connect to organizations that are doing the work.
Mm.
Do not, please, I'm just gonna say this to everybody that's listening to me, particularly the next generation. There is no need to create another effort and another organization unless there is sincerely a gap. We have so many powerful organizations in our country, in our nation, and even in our world that are doing very powerful work. And we have talents and gifts that we need to bring to that work, to enhance that work, you know, to strengthen that work. Let's not water ourselves down by continuing to create something else. Let's, you know, strengthen those that have the momentum, that have the infrastructure. And so part of Be Love is also to say, how can I get connected to the work and begin to do some of that work? And it requires you researching. You know, we're going to over time begin to identify those organizations so we can point people in directions, because there are organizations all over the face of this nation that are doing the work in every city, town, state, and nation. Some of them we don't even know about.
You just have to find
But
out.
their work is, and they have outcomes. They have powerful outcomes. And so we just don't need to duplicate efforts that's not necessary. And so people can come to the King Center website, sign up, sign the pledge, take the classes, and we'll have other phases and stages that'll be a part of this, because we are going to be, you know, pushing people toward policy, because our goal again is the beloved community. You know, legislation that looks like the beloved community in its outcome.
All right, that's easy for us to understand. What you're really, to me, what I'm getting out of this, I mean, love is more powerful than anything. So
it's the only way we're gonna get out of what we're in.
Get
it's
out
the
of
only
your
way we're gonna get out.
weakness. It's the most powerful thing that you can.
The most powerful force on the face of the earth, and it's not weak. I just want to say that to people, because a lot of people feel like, we hear that. Can we all? No, love confronts, it resists, but it does it in a spirit and a manner and a heart where it's not trying to destroy people. It's trying to destroy the evil.
Right, but not the person.
And not the person, because let me tell you something. That person, and I know that we have systems in place where, you know, people can be penalized and all of that kind of stuff, and that's necessary. So I'm not dismissing that. But at the end of the day, we can't subject everything to punishment. Some things need transformation and rehabilitation. People need transformation and rehabilitation. And so just, again, trying to discard, cancel, I'm done with them. What is it profiting us but creating more of this?
It does not.
More polarization.
Right. Well, Dr. King, I have so enjoyed talking with you, but I don't want to necessarily hog the conversation. We did leave some time for some Q&A for some of the attendees. And I just want to pull up, there's one in particular, okay? Let's see. I'm going to read this. This is from Anthony. My question is this: it certainly appears that the former president played a major role in revealing the level of racial prejudice and racism that continues to plague American society. Although there have been many laws passed that make it difficult to discriminate against marginalized people, the underlying causes of such behavior are still here. How hopeful are you that someday even the attitudes of those folks may change?
Well, I'm going to say this in the reverse. Number one, I am hopeful because my attitude is what it needs to be. And my job is to be infectious, and to continue to be a vessel for love and transformation in this world. The person indicated that our previous president kind of unveiled or revealed some things. Actually, that was the case under President Obama when we started witnessing a lot of this. It was prior to President Trump.
Yes.
And if we're all honest, it's been here, as you said earlier, all along. We just know how to kind of keep things in a false kind of state of peace, as my dad say, the absence of tension. But there's always been this underlying tension, and there's always been another America since the beginning. So let's not act like what was uncovered under President Trump was something new. It's been here. It was given room to act out. But if I might be frank from Berenice King, it at least showed us where we still have a lot to do because we were in denial. And I fear that if we stayed in that denial, what we've seen is only a smidgen of what we would have experienced. We think we've really experienced something. Had we kept going with the lie underneath the surface that we were in this post-racial America,
It would have been.
oh my God, do you know what was building underneath the surface of those young Black people? The level of anger that they have right now, righteous anger that they have, it would have teetered on a kind of rage that would have been uncontrollable. So I'm just gonna say it. What he did and how he treated and talked about people, horrible. But I thank God for President Trump awakening us in this way. He didn't know he was doing it, you know, besides himself. But he awakened this nation. He really did. And so I'm very hopeful that people's hearts are going to change, because there's no need of me even doing the work that I do if I'm not. Our work is about heart change. It's about heart change. It's about legislative change. You know, it's about, you know, policy change. But at the core of it, it is about heart change. And it's the harder part of the work, but I'm game because I've seen people's hearts change.
Well, Dr. King, another question. As a non-person of color, how can I be a good ally to people of color and the Black Lives Matter movement?
Start by saying, these are not my allies. These are my brothers and sisters. They're part of my human family. We're all, as my father said, caught in this inescapable network of mutuality, tied in this single garment of destiny. What affects them directly affects me indirectly. And I can't be what I ought to be until they all that they ought to be. And they can't be all they ought to be until I am what I ought to be. We got to change the conversation around allyship to this human family. And when there's a true sense of family, when something's going on with a member of the family,
yeah,
we all go to work because it's our family. It affects us. And so the best way to do it is have a different mindset so that you can approach it from a different perspective, because this problem that we're facing, this is not a Black problem. This is a humanity problem. Racism is a problem of humanity. You know, poverty is a problem of humanity. It's not poor people. What does it say about us who, quote unquote, are not poor? That we even allow these kind of conditions to exist in our world. So that's the best way, I believe, you can show up as a member of the family and say, let's get to work. I'm here to learn. Like I said, learn how to live together as brothers and sisters. And whatever talents and gifts I have, I'm here to share those as well.
Well, now here's an interesting question, Dr. King. How do we as a community address the concerns of ethics in artificial intelligence?
Sometimes I think it's too late.
The more we advance.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. My father, I encourage everybody to get the book, Where Do We Go From Here, Chaos or Community? He wrote it 4 years ago. And in that last chapter in the World House, he talks about how our scientific and technological abundance and advancement has outpaced our moral and spiritual progression, and that we have to overcome that gap, that we've got to spend more time cultivating the inward self. And that's where he called for this revolution of values. So if we're going to, as AI comes on, as anything in technology, as with anything that we as humans are creating, if we don't reconstruct our commitment to each other as humanity, then that's when AI is going to get out of control, and it's going to be more about that than people. So I think it's the importance of staying centered and grounded and remembering that the highest form or the highest point of creation for God was humankind. We are his highest form of creation. We should never forget that. And that these instruments are created to be tools for us to help each other and not harm and hurt each other. And the tools should never become above us. It should never control us. And we should always keep it under control.
All right. Dr. King, this is a question from someone who lives in Canada. Hi, Dr. Berenice King. What gives you most hope about today's environment for the future of civil rights and other issues?
What gives me most hope? The number of people who are engaged. I've never seen, I mean, and particularly the next generation. For years, I would go around the college campuses looking in the faces of young people, and I didn't see anything there. It was hollow. They were disengaged, apathetic, self-centered. And I would just over and over again try to call people out of that, call these young people out of that. And I am so proud that there's a generation now, not just a generation, it seems like it is becoming a part of the fabric of the child youth DNA now, to be concerned about the betterment of our world. So I'm extremely hopeful. Young people are thinking these ways on a date. They weren't even nowhere near that. They're thinking about it on a daily. It's about committing their life to this. Oh yes, that gives me hope every day, all day, and I'm glad that I'm plugged in to be a part of it with them.
I'm so glad that you said that, because that was actually one of the questions that I wanted to ask you personally, but you just answered it. And I didn't even have to ask it about not only the millennials, but our Gen Y, those coming behind them even. They seem to be the ones that certainly have their fingers on the button.
On the pulse. Yeah, they do.
Right?
Yes, they do.
All right. Well, I hope that answers your question. This person from Canada, they didn't leave their name, but I'm very happy that they weighed in also. I wanted to just give this quote. It was from you recently. You said, we have to find common pathways to move forward as a nation. That's quite prolific. And part of those, finding those common pathways, again, is to engage with people I guess we normally wouldn't even engage with.
Yeah, it is. And it's listening. We
Mm.
don't listen well to each other. Because as soon as I hear something offensive or a trigger, because we all have triggers. We know how that goes. When something triggers, I just go south. I'm not hearing you anymore. At that point, I'm trying to formulate what I'm gonna do to come back at you, or I get just so emotional and upset, and sometimes people get enraged. But we have to learn how to be humble enough to consider that the other person may have something that they can offer. And we have to be willing to discover what that is. And, you know, there is good in the worst of us, and it's bad in the best of us. Now, every now and then, there are these people who seem like they're just purely evil. I don't believe there are any purely evil people, because I think people were born and processed. And if they got to that place that we call them purely evil, it's because of that whole processing. So I can't not try to find a common pathway, because guess what? I want to coexist in peace. I want to coexist in prosperity, and I want to coexist in freedom. And so it behooves me to do that kind of work. But I am going to check injustice. I'm going to resist it with every fiber of my being. I'm going to call people to their humanity. And I'm going to ensure that we are thinking about all these policies that we are trying to make. At the end of the day, I want to make sure the outcome is justice for all. Not just for me, but for all. And so I'm willing to decrease so that we can all increase, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, because that's part of that process.
Decrease to increase.
Yeah, so that we can all increase. I wish more people would think like that, because it's about getting mine, you know. I want us to get ours. And everybody who doesn't have, we need to expend an extraordinary amount of time ensuring that we bring people, you know, up and in, and there's equity, because that's a fundamental problem in today's society. I don't even want to hear about equality. Let's deal with equity first. Then we can start talking about some equality. Because if my school system is here and yours is here, and equality says we're gonna make sure that all schools have, you know, 500, 10,000, 2 million, you're gonna go there, and I'm gonna go here, and the gap will still be there.
Good point. Very good point. Dr. King, I guess we've come to our time. We've gone a little over, and there is more of the program today, but I can't thank you enough for this conversation. I can go on for hours listening to you, and I'm sure everyone else on this call feels the same way. So I want to thank you again for spending your time with us this afternoon. And I hope we come away from this uplifted, because I certainly am, and I'm sure everyone else here who has heard your voice and your powerful words will do the same thing. I'm going to remember love, humility, equity before equality, because we can get there first.
And listening.
And listening, yes.
To understand.
Thank you so much, Dr. Berenice King.
Thank you.
Our humble pleasure. And with that, I'm going to turn the rest of the program back over to Dr. Day.
Thank you, Pat. Dr. King, it was an honor having you here today. You are truly a blessing to us. You said some very powerful words, And my takeaway is we can no longer stand in the shadows of the historical monument of social injustice. You reminded us that we must become an active participant in an organization back again. Pat, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
You always come through when we ask you to do, and we appreciate that. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Gallagher. So she will transition us into our second hour.
Thank you so much, Dr. Day. I just want to say thank you so much, both to Pat Harvey, who moderated a fabulous, fabulous, fabulous words of wisdom for us, and to Dr. Berenice King. I cannot tell you, I took pages and pages of notes, and we'll bring this back through our Race Equity and Social Justice Center. I feel such a strong connection. I can't explain it, but I feel a very strong connection with this. And with the project that you have, the Be Love project, you can look forward to LACC becoming very, very involved with this, because you resonate with me with how to work with everyone to try to help everyone to get to this place of peace and justice, because that's what this is about. We are all human beings. We all have a story. We all have a background. We all have our stuff, but we also have each other, and we're only going to be as strong as we are together. We cannot do this alone. Thank you so much. Well, if any of you out there are like me, this has been not just a remarkable words coming from Dr. King, but really heartfelt and strategies of things that we can do as our LACC family. And I strongly believe that LACC is a family. Sometimes it means that we disagree. Sometimes it means that we fairly strongly disagree. Those of you who've had some interactions with me know that I'm a very strong person in my thoughts and in my words, but everybody matters. Everyone's opinion matters. It doesn't matter if it's the exact opposite of what my opinion is. We can all learn from each other, and we can all grow from each other. We just have to decide that we will all sit at the table together and that we will talk these things through. You can't leave the table mad. You can't leave the table because you don't like what someone said. You have to be strong enough to stay at the table so that you can, as Dr. King shared with us, listen and bring about the human side of what is being conveyed. Because we all come from a place where we learned from others and we developed our practices as a human being from others. Now we have the opportunity to continue to develop our practices as a collective. I love the collective. As many of you know, I'm from a large family, so the collective works best for me. I'm not afraid of ever being alone. I got 12 brothers and sisters, and they've got spouses and children. I'm never going to be alone. And because I'm not alone, you're not alone. We are not alone. We are together. And we will be able to do so much more if we decide that we will do it together. And we will all come to this place in different ways and at different moments. My ask is, please keep walking. Just keep walking in the same direction. Even if you disagree, even if you vehemently disagree, we will get there. We just have to keep walking in the same direction together and help each other if we stumble. Thank you, Dr. Day.
Thank you. Well said, Dr. Gallagher, and always thank you for your support. Let us move forward with the second half. We prepared a great afternoon for you, but before I do this, I just want to go off script for about 30 seconds. I still see Trustee Michelle Henderson. Will you just unmute and just wave your hand, Trustee Henderson, and say hi to us, please?
Hello, everyone.
Great having you here. We're so glad that you could join us.
Thank you for this conversation. Thank you.
Excuse me, Dr. Day, I just wanted to recognize Dr. Ruben Smith, our Vice Chancellor of Facilities. He was able to get his camera going, and I want to welcome him to this great conversation. And Trustee Henderson, we would love to hear some words from you. We are so appreciative of you being on our Board of Trustees. And I'm just going to out something right now. Next month is Women's Month and Women's History Month. And every year we have a breakfast for the women in our district. And actually our chancellor is brave enough to come to that breakfast with us every year. And we would like to invite you to be our keynote this year, if you would do that for us. It'll be the last, everybody jot this down, the last Wednesday of March, and you'll get information on it soon. We just host it. It's not LACC's. We invite women throughout our district to join us, and we get more and more every year, and we would be so happy, Trustee Henderson, if you would be our keynote speaker. Now I guess you can't say no, right?
No, I can't say no. Thank you for that. That's wow, I'm honored. Thank you.
Camille, let's move into our next half of the program. Please, the video.
Hello. It is tradition to open the ceremony with a ritual and ask the elders for permission to begin. Elders in this meeting room, those who consider themselves elders, do we have permission to begin?
Yes. You have permission to begin.
Thank you. In the spirit of unity and culture, we are opening this ceremony with paying respect to our ancestors and pioneers whose shoulders we stand on today. A ritual within the African context is a ceremony or a practice that allows us to connect with each other and pay respect to our ancestors and those who have paved the way before us. A libation is performed typically for the ancestors. Their intercession and blessings are invoked. Their names are called out in remembrance, and we say Ashe after each name is called. Brandy.
Yes. To the untold number of our people that did not survive the Middle Passage and whose bones now litter the floor of the Atlantic Ocean, we give you thanks, Ashe. We are the proof that our ancestors survived. To those who endured unimaginable pain, torture, and humiliation, who survived so that their children might live, those who hoped against hope, who prayed prayers that at times seemed to fall on deaf ears. To you, we owe our existence, and we give God thanks for you, Ashe. For the tenacity of Fannie Lou Hamer, a civil rights icon and voting rights pioneer, who said, "When I liberate myself, I liberate others. If you don't speak out, ain't nobody gonna speak out for you. We give you thanks, Ashe."
Ashe.
For the passion for James Baldwin, who was an American novelist, playwright, essayist, poet, and activist, who said, "Not everything is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. We give you thanks, Ashe."
Ashe.
For the thought-provoking words of Maya Angelou, who was an American poet, memoirist, and civil rights activist, who said, "If you're always trying to be normal, you will never know how amazing you can be. We give you thanks, Ashe."
Ashe.
For the impeccable gift of John Lewis, who was an American politician, statesman, and civil rights activist, and leader who served in the United States House of Representatives for Georgia's 5th Congressional District, who said, "Ours is not the struggle of one day, 1 week, or 1 year. Ours is not the struggle of one judicial appointment or presidential term. Ours is the struggle of a lifetime, or maybe even many lifetimes. And each one of us in every generation must do our part. We give you thanks, Ashe."
Ashe.
For the beautiful gift of Cicely Tyson, who was an American actress and fashion model, who said, "The moment anyone tries to demean or degrade you in any way, you have to know how great you are. Nobody would bother to beat you down if you were not a threat. We give you thanks, Ashe."
Ashe. And let everyone say, Ashe, Ashe, Ashe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dwayne McDuffie was a writer of comic books and television, known for producing and writing the animated series Static Shock and Justice League Unlimited, and co-founding the pioneering, minority-owned and operated comic book company Milestone Media, which focused on underrepresented minorities in American comics. Dwayne McDuffie is an important figure to me because it was gratifying to see someone that looked like me creating characters that appealed to young Black readers and viewers.
Growing up, I was the youngest of 4 children and 29 grandchildren. So as you can imagine, it was a little difficult for me to find my voice. Each Black History Month, our school would hold a competition where we would recite the poetry of historic Black poets such as Maya Angelou, Gwendolyn Brooks, and Langston Hughes. Now, I tried my hardest to go inside my attic to get my trophies, but I couldn't find them. But not to brag, but I would win first place every year. Even at a young age, I really admired how these Black people were able to make sure that their voices were heard and make sure that they were respected, no matter the circumstances that they were in. I am confident, outspoken, and headstrong because they were.
I am because he was. Maynard H. Nelson was my second great-grandfather, a linguist, notable educator, and civic leader in New Orleans, Louisiana. From the late 1800s until his death in 1933, he was the headmaster of his own school in the French Quarters, which was opened to all. Among other subjects, the school provided instruction in many of the languages in which he was fluent. Along with other community leaders, Professor Nelson had a hand in establishing Xavier University and HBCU. I stand on Maynard Nelson's shoulders as an educator today.
I am because they were strong, they were courageous, they were brave. I am because she was strong, she was brave, she was courageous. Because of her, my mother. Therefore, I am. Thank you.
My grandmother was a strong, caring, helpful, and resilient woman. My mother had the same attributes as my grandmother. Both my grandmother and mother were hard workers and providers for their households. To them, failure was not an option. Strength and resiliency run through my bloodline and my veins. Being raised as a strong girl, I was raised that a woman's place was in control. It is because of them that I am instilling the same attributes to my daughter, so that she can be because I am.
During Black History Month, we celebrate the legacy and honor the great works of gifted and glorious men and women whose ancestry stems from the roots of Africa and throughout the world. In doing so, I must acknowledge an awesome man and a loving woman, my parents, George and Willie E. James. These unsung heroes instilled in my brothers, me, and sister our family values and morals: integrity, compassion, courage, dignity, and respect. As I think about the individual to whom I will honor for Black History Month, I must reflect on those morals that were instilled in me by my parents. The person who comes to mind is a South African anti-apartheid politician. I had the very fortunate opportunity to fly to Johannesburg, South Africa, and interview her in her home. Winnie Mandela, thank you for leading the way. Because you were, I am. I am because you were.
So now we will transition into a reflection time. The reflection time is, it's our time for change. And as we reflect on Dr. Berenice King's words, as we reflect on the images we just saw, how do we move the needle forward? And one of the concepts that Dr. King, she spoke of, when it comes to love, what comes to your mind? So I'll pose this question and I challenge everyone to take a few seconds and to think about this. When it comes to love, as we attempt to embrace everyone, the human race, how shall we go about that? It's my first question, and I'll open it up to our guests. Give everyone a few moments. We have any hands, Lillian or Camille?
No, not yet.
Okay. Okay. I think I see one hand.
You have one.
We can't hear you, Lillian.
I promoted Lisbeth Gant into the panelist so she can answer the question.
Thank you so much. My name is Lisbeth Gant Britton, and I have the honor to be part of the LACC faculty family. I'm going to just give a very, very quick answer because there's so many components to these wonderful questions. First of all, I'm so proud of all of the youth who are part of this question and who are part of our upcoming solutions that we have been co-creating ever since our town hall starting this past summer. My personal moment of honoring my own family goes back to a family of teachers, my aunt, my grandmother, and so many members of my family giving of themselves to want to help others. So I'm just giving kind of a compact, generalized answer, if that will be helpful and appropriate. Thank you so much for letting me be a person who can teach others as part of this process.
I think we lost her. Did we lose her?
I just stopped.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I didn't want to talk too long. I'd be happy to continue the conversation, but I didn't want to speak too long.
No, okay, great. Do we have any other hands, Camilla or Lillian?
No, not yet.
Okay. So I'll just speak. When I think of the concept of love, I think of, as Berenice King thought, this human concept of love. Above all, love one another. I'm a believer, and so that comes from the first book of Peter. And so when we think of love, we think of, we may not agree with everyone. We may not agree with their perspectives or the way they go about doing things. And we need to challenge ourselves to understand people's personal experiences, their lived experiences, and build upon that trust. If that person does not trust you enough to be vulnerable enough to share their lived experience as to where they experience trauma, how are you showing your brotherly or sisterly love? How do we embrace that?
I'm just going to answer very quickly while others are thinking, perhaps. Professor Berry, thank you so much. Your question is so well taken, because in our classroom settings, as well as in our families, we are getting a chance to practice those things. And we're seeing the LACC campus being a great example of that. In a single class, I have students from all over the world who have come from many different cultural traditions, who have been processed, as Dr. King said, through different systems of maybe having a prejudice that we don't even know we have. And so to make ourselves vulnerable, even in the classroom, to ask someone else a question, or if someone accidentally says something that we think is kind of incorrect because they didn't understand previously, and for us to not take that kind of the wrong way, but to then be in conversation, have a dialogue in our classroom settings as faculty and students, I think is a great preparation for us, because each of our students, of course, is going to be going out into the world in some type of family or professional setting. So often we think of, we just had Valentine's Day, right? So often in terms of the media, we think of love in a very narrow way. Well, I have to kiss this person or give them a bunch of flowers or chocolate. And so this more humanistic, strengthening love that I think is something that maybe a lot of people right now are reflecting upon in our town hall today.
Great, great. Thank you so much, Dr. Gant-Britton.
I'm going to let others speak. So thank you for allowing me to share.
Anyone else? I see, I think I see a few answers or responses in the chat. Lillian or Nicole, I'm sorry, Lillian or Camille, you want to respond or do you want me to read them out?
You're on mute, Lillian.
The phrase of the decade, huh? Okay. This one is from, I want to make sure I pronounce your name correctly, Marilyn Martin. She said, we can go about dealing with the lack of trust by seeking to understand before we expect to be understood. As Dr. King said earlier today, that is practical advice that can apply to all of our human family relationships.
Okay.
And this one is from Erica Blanton. Sisterhood and brotherhood takes reaching out and communicating and being respectful to find common ground. Love for one another is essential in that process. Hashtag beloved community.
Thank you.
And this is from our Camille Goulet, our very own. For those who don't get the system, ask yourself whether we need to change the system, not demand conformity. I like that one.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'll move right along to the next question. And this question is specifically for my peers, millennials and Gen Zers. As we reflect on our past, as Dr. King said, there was great work. However, we grew up in a society where we were told we can be all, validate your feelings, use your words, and everyone should respect your feelings and stand firm on your beliefs and everything. But I think somewhere in the middle of that, we got out of touch with how tradition works, why tradition is essential. When I think about that, I think about they, as my sister Pat Harvey stated, right? And we go back into the White House, right? One of my favorite, AOC. Another one of my favorite, Nancy Pelosi. Two different perspectives, two different ways of approaching things. How do we look at Nancy Pelosi's perspective and AOC's perspective? How do we, as the generation moving forward, embrace both of those concepts? Stand firm on your beliefs, validate my feelings, and embrace the tradition and wisdom that is so essential at this time. I'm not going to leave this question just to my peers, millennials and Gen Zers, but I want some wisdom in here as well. So those of you that consider yourself wisdoms, my elders, please assist us in this. Give you all a few moments.
Well, Dr. Berry, since I'm definitely one of your elders, I think it's so interesting, the question that you ask, because when you have pretty substantial differences, it appears that there's a huge gap. But when you really take a close look at those differences, so often those differences are really a parallel track, and that you really are not as far apart as you think you are when you start to really talk about it and look at it. And the fact that we were born decades apart doesn't really matter for what we both want to accomplish during our lifetime, right? What we want to do is leave the world better than we found it. That's the mark we want to leave. Could care less about being famous or rich or any of those other things. But at the end of the day, it's making sure that the place that you leave is a better place than what you found. And it doesn't matter how many generations separate us, it's the same goal. And I'm so happy to be able to share the same goal with you, Dr. Berry.
Thank you.
To be able to walk down this path together. And we have definitely marked differences, but it's wonderful to, I have to tell you that it has only been through the work that we've done through recognizing Black History Month and the ceremonies we've done with the Moja that I even came into this position of being an elder. And quite frankly, I really like being here. I don't think I know enough of anything, but it's kind of nice that now my hair matches my feeling. So thank you for the time.
Thank you, President Gallagher. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for allowing us this opportunity. And again, thank you for your wisdom. Thank you. I see a hand of Trustee Hoffman.
Yeah, I have to jump in here. And I do agree with Dr. Gallagher, and I have that same hair, and I used to color it before the pandemic. But I think, Dr. Berry, you bring up a very good point, and you and the younger generation challenges us to do a better job, challenges us to be better all around. You know, I've been in the community college system now for 23 years. I work in another community college in another district. And it is no longer okay just to say something to a student and expect that they're going to accept that as the truth, right? Our students, our younger faculty, and our younger staff has really challenged us to take a deep look at our systems, at our processes, at our curriculum, and do a better job. And so for that, I'm grateful. And I think, you know, AOC kind of does the same thing with Nancy Pelosi, right? She's pushing, she's questioning. She's not just accepting the status quo. And I think that's really important. I think what Dr. Gallagher and I bring to the table is our knowledge, our wisdom, our expertise, and our commitment to our district, to our students, to our faculty, to our staff. And I want to go back to the question about love. You know, it's been my philosophy, and Dr. Gallagher can certainly attest to this because we don't always agree, to lead with compassion, to lead with that understanding of, you know, the person you're dealing with on the other side that you're not in agreement with, or somebody that you have to discipline, an employee or a student, you know, we need to understand what trauma are they bringing, you know, what is their story? And I think we're doing a better job of that. Certainly LA City College is doing a great job, but we can do better. I'm really appreciative for this conversation. This has just been really amazing and uplifting. And thank you so much for including me today.
Thank you. Thank you. A few others. I see a few. I don't want to call you out, but you know, I know who you are.
I'll definitely chime in, Dr. Berry. You know, I definitely appreciate this dialogue. One of the things that is important to acknowledge is truth.
Yes.
And today, I think that we're a country thirsting and starving of ethics and integrity, not just politically, but with our leaders. You know, and it's that's something that we shouldn't accept. But you have to start with ourselves, and we have to look at, you know, how we're leading. And one of the things that's critical and important for me, and what I've grasped onto is to earn the respect of others in the community, you have to model what that community values the most in itself. And so when we talk about love, we have to talk about purpose and passion. You know, Dr. King did say, you know, she brought up we marry our gifts and talents with our purpose and love, we can do great things one at a time. And I think that the very dialogue that we have today gives us that opportunity. And I think we are all in a place where we need to be at the right time to build on this energy. So thank you for giving me an opportunity to share.
Thank you so much, Dr. Smith. I see Trustee Henderson Trustee Henderson.
Thank you, Dr. Berry. I like to echo the sentiments of Dr. Gallagher and Trustee Hoffman. When you bring up the example of AOC and Nancy Pelosi, you have the sense of the old school and the new school, the past and the present. And Dr. Gallagher, that bridge, right? We really need to think about bridging that gap between us, because the things that are different about us are the things that should bring us together, not further divide us. And age is one of those things. We find all the time there's this old versus young, and I'm in my early 50s, so I'm in that sweet spot. I'm too old to be young and too young to be old, but I have a beautiful AARP card in my wallet. And I think that when we consider old school versus new school, young and old, and all of those are words that divide us. Because essentially, as Dr. King stated, we are all human beings, we are all one, and we need one another to move forward. And when we think about one another as humans, and we come to the table with compassion, as Dr. Smith stated, we are able to better move forward and consider all of us as not as a melting pot, but more of a stew, where we acknowledge each other in the context of communicating and moving forward. So, we're all saying the exact same thing, coming from different places, because in addressing our history, we address trauma and we address hurt that we all have to be strong enough to talk about in order to move past it.
Great. Thank you so much. So now I'm looking forward to hearing from some of my peers. We're very passionate in this area.
Dr. Berry, I would like to say a few words. Are you able to hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so I fall in, in between, because I'm a Gen Xer. And I find that, being in the district, almost 19 years, there's a lot of tradition, right? And I think as we get more seasoned, we get more and more entrenched in our ways, and we don't want to change. So there's this big resistance that I don't need to change, right? The students need to change. But if we come at it from a different, and I like the way Dr. King said, if we could just find a common pathway to work together on this goal and put all that other stuff aside about what way is right, what way is not right, I think we would have better success.
Thank you. Anyone else? Gen Zers, millennials? No. I see Dr. Juve. Hello, Dr. Juve. I think Lillian has to unmute him.
Hello, Dr. Berry. Since you called on us, I think we'll respond. I think at the end of the day, it's all a matter of perspective. Not too long ago, I would have thought of myself as the young 18, 19-year-old that was militant and would have been trying to push, thinking of myself as an AOC. And now that not that the tables have turned, but the tides have turned, I'm no longer wearing my do-rag to class, but I'm and with that perspective and wisdom, you find new ways to bring people together, to listen to all the perspectives, because you know better now, and so it's a different way of pushing the agenda forward. And so I appreciate having, just as Dr. Gallagher is talking about, her hair being white, my sides are starting to become white as well. And so,
right?
and
Yeah.
the fact that those that are coming after us also have that fire and that passion to listen to them and remember how it felt for us when we were in their shoes. So it's leading with compassion, leading with love, and knowing that we all had that same goal.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Dr. Juve. I think I see one more hand. Vice President Allen.
Hi, how are you?
How
You know,
are you?
Good, thank you. What an amazing day today. I love it. Everything has been amazing and just was so well done. So thank you all. Well, if Dr. Juve feels that he's getting old, then I'm really getting old, because I remember when Dr. Juve was, I was his advisor and he was going to class in a full Lakers getup in all yellow. So what I guess, you know, you bring two very strong examples up. You know, AOC has one way of doing things. Nancy Pelosi has it. I don't think it's an either or. I look at it as a combination, a tool belt of different strategies of how to lead. You know, you may come in with a softer approach, but if you're not making the progress that you want, maybe you need to shift to a more direct approach. And so that's the way I envision it is leadership has the opportunity to utilize different tools as we try to advocate. And so that's what I try to teach the student leaders. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'd like to add my point. Give you a little background about myself. I grew up with in a household with traditional Southern grandparents, right? So those of you that are African American are familiar with the African American culture. You understand what that household looked like, right? And so my wisdom was embedded in me, tradition, just from the beginning. And so I'm always at the point where I'm balancing the progressiveness of California lifestyle as well, as opposed to my culture and my ancestors, Southern background, or even my ancestors. And Dr. King, she touched on a very important point, and I think many of the people in my generation and the Generation Zers forget this particular point, and she stated it. We have to remain at the table. And people do not like to be at a table when people are defensive, right? When you're coming to the table without love, then the traditionalists do not want you to be at the table, right? And so they attempt to remove you from the table. And she also continued to say that don't reinvent the wheel, right? So when I thought about that, I reflected on millennials and generational Zers, because we are at the top of the list of being an entrepreneur. We get upset with something and we say, I'm going to go build my own business, right? But what we're doing oftentimes is creating another avenue, as opposed to, and removing ourselves from the table, as opposed to remaining at that table and listening and coming up with another way to make this vehicle, which we have our legacy agencies, and we also have other agencies, right, that are already in position financially and in other ways, as you said, with connections, right, to build upon that. So when I think about that, I think about how do we, as millennials and generational Zers, kind of get out that mindset of instant gratification. I want to be heard, I want to be appreciated, and remain at the table and get the job done. And so one of the ways I look at it is, again, like I said, balancing that tradition and that progressiveness. And that's what I do. I noticed in the chat, if we have another hand. No, but I noticed in the chat, and I don't know if I'm reading it correctly. Do we have someone in the back? I think, do we have some senators from Philly? Am I reading that correctly? Lillian and Camille?
No.
Okay, all right, okay.
She's actually she's suggesting that you check out Philadelphia Rep Kenyatta.
Okay, sorry for reading that, okay. My final question, Professor Anthony Clark has his hand raised up.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes. We can't hear you now. I think, did we lose him?
I think we did. He was on the phone.
Okay, okay. And my final question is, I think we're running out of time. Is he on now?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, I hear you.
Oh, okay. Hey, look, I can proudly say that, hey, I'm senior even to President Gallagher, and I thank our trustee also. So I want to just share a little bit of my wisdom as an older boomer, okay? I think my thoughts right now are a little different than those that have been expressed thus far. And I think what the point that I want to make is just to remind everyone that this is a lifelong fight. Look, and there's struggles all through this. I've reached a point in my life right now, for instance, that I am struggling mightily with this idea of love. My daughter is a deputy sheriff. We clash nonstop about issues regarding police violence and so forth. So much so that we've become estranged from time to time. Now, at the moment, we're doing okay. But I'll tell you, all of this is so visceral for me, and to project a mindset that is one of a wise approach, for instance, is very difficult. It is very difficult, and so I find myself at this stage of my life. I'll be 71 in a couple of days, and I'm struggling with this, something that I should have learned years ago. But it's a lifelong battle, and sometimes it could be very challenging. And I just wanted to remind all you youngsters that, including the president, and everybody, it's a challenge.
Thank you for being so authentic and being transparent. I want to move it on. Most of you all that know me, I'm not a person of words. I like to see action, and oftentimes I often stop listening and move really, really quickly with the action. And I think that's from me being a millennial and that instant gratification, right? And so my final question is, again, reflecting on the past and moving forward today, how do we intersect or collaborate with the mechanisms that worked in the past and the new things that we, again, as the future, want to implement? How do we bridge that gap? What type of action items? Just some suggestions. You can throw them in the chat box, just some things that come to mind.
We do have a hand up. Wanda Yan.
Okay. Wanda?
I'm sorry, I didn't have my hand up. Something was on my iPad. I apologize.
So I'll begin in the chat box. Anyone else? There are few.
Mm-hmm.
Opportunities, great, great. I'll read them off. Intentional policy, intentional direct conversation, letting the issue from the past that hold us back. I guess letting go of the issues from the past of holding us back. Opportunities for forms such as today's events here. I missed the question. This is truth, I'm sorry. I guess the question was, as reflect on the mechanisms and the things that happened in the past, like from Martin Luther King's nonviolent and Dr. King today, nonviolent, and today the way the millennials and the Gen Zers protest a little differently than in the past. And I'll just be a little transparent. The Black Lives Matter committee and I, when we were planning this, the young people, we said that, well, how do we just say we're just tired? Like, we don't want to do it that way anymore, right? And so we wanted to pose that question to Dr. King. And we had to reflect on that a little bit, right? And I had to reflect on it because this is what I'm hearing as a professor. I'm hearing this in the classroom. I'm hearing this amongst my peers. And so how do we embrace both? What do we do differently? So these are some of the things, that's the question. Like, how do we embrace both mechanisms to move forward into some tangible actionable items for today? Barack Obama says the future is for our youth. The elders can't support them based on their wisdom. The elders can support based on their wisdom. Dr. Juf says debating and arguing the issues and not the people. I love this one. We still have to love them, as Dr. King said. I know this person is, but thank you for modeling that we are all a work in progress and lifelong learners. And President Gallagher, she states, the benefit of our experience can help to inform our younger brothers and sisters and the similarities and the differences. And the final one is social justice organization and policy. Thank you all so much for supporting us. And I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Day.
Wow, what an interesting dialogue. Thank you for your open, organic comments. We really appreciate your support. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Gallagher for final comments.
My goodness, I have to say that, we've had such fabulous town halls for our Black Lives Matter town halls for months and months and months. Today was, it's another one of those times that I feel that there's a shift in kind of my thinking and a little bit perhaps my approach, which is exactly what these are for. And someone in the chat room said this was emotional. This is very emotional. And other of our town halls have not been this emotional, and there wasn't as much from Dr. King except that thought-provoking. I have so many notes from this and so much that was thought-provoking for me. And I think it's really important for us to continue to be able to share this and to dialogue about this. And now that we have Dr. Berry, who's really spearheading our efforts in race equity and social justice, I just think that the time is now. And it is ours. And we've just got to grab it with gusto and do it. And not talk about it, but do it. And everybody who knows me knows I am a doer. I don't like just to talk about things. Obviously, I like to talk, but not just about things. I like to do. And I can't wait till we plan our next, not a Black Lives Matter town hall, not even waiting till then, but another opportunity for us just to get together and have a conversation. I love you all. I appreciate you all coming. Thank you so much to our trustees, Trustee Henderson and Trustee Hoffman, who stayed throughout this entire period. Thank you to Chancellor Rodriguez, who came and joined us for the period he had. And a special thanks to Dr. Smith. I invited him early on to this because he and I have some kindred spirits about us. And I knew this would be something he would enjoy. So thank you, Dr. Smith, for joining us as well. Thank you to all of you out there who came and shared with us. Thank you for sharing in the chat. I see some of my colleagues from Trade Tech. Linda, I saw you in the chat. So good to see all of you. Mwah. This is awesome for our Black History Month and for our Black Lives Matter Town Hall. Thank you so much to Dr. Day for this leadership on this effort. You are doing amazing work, and to your entire team. I'm so lucky, and I promise you I'll work really, really hard to make really, really good things happen. And everybody have a fabulous weekend. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.